Invisible people. Invisible people. Hamilton Streetcar, 1966. I didn't count it down. I mean, I gotta go back now. We're halfway through it. It's Wednesday. We were 2/3 of the way through, which is actually more than halfway. The picks of the week. Oh, I am still tired, believe it or not. As I mentioned, I took a week off to spend some time with my son, mostly to read. And then I went back to work last Wednesday, and I have not had a day off. On top of that, my boss and my assistant manager both went to San Diego for Comic Con for Thursday and Friday anyway. And then they both felt like taking the weekend off. So Granddad ran the shop, which no complaints here. I get to pick the music. I don't have to do much. It was super dead Thursday, Friday. But now I'm starting to get worn out again. All that vacation time is just going up the pipe. So I had already been planning on taking Monday off to celebrate the day of my birth. I might take Sunday too, because now I only just read last week's picks just now. So now I got 2 weeks worth of books, and that's a lot of books these days. So that'll be better than blowing my head off. It will, but only by a little bit. But in the meantime, I'm going to read these 3 comic books first. I'll start with this one. Ant-Man #1 from the Marvel Comics group. This is written by Al Ewing, and so I'm on board. This is going to be a mini, I don't think Ewing is definitely writing X-Men Red, which is a monthly, which I think is probably going to go, I would imagine, at least for a year, like most of these X books. I think all the X books have gone, the main X-Men title only went a year before it restarted. Marauders and New Mutants made it 2 years. Wait, New Mutants has not restarted. Marauders has restarted. Other titles have been just canceled, like Hellions and X Factor. I don't think X Factor even got a year. 6 months to a year is about how long a Marvel or DC comic is going to last. That's not Avengers or Batman or something like that. But Ewing's doing a lot of these little miniseries. He has another Defenders miniseries that he started last week. They don't call them limited or miniseries anymore, though, which I think when I was a kid in the 80s, it was across the top of everyone. #1 in a 4-issue limited series, or #1 in a 6-issue limited, or #1 in a 12-issue limited. And it was a big selling point because it was like, oh, this isn't something you can just catch up on. This is going to be a mini. And they also, it seemed like anyway, that they would also put stuff into those miniseries that you couldn't find in the regular title. Kitty Pryde and Wolverine was a miniseries that came out in 1986 or 7. And my friends and I were very like, oh, that's 2 of our favorite characters in one book together. That's one of our favorite strange dad-daughter, but still with a tiny... Actually, no, I don't think that's true. Wolverine has a lot of relationships with young women in the pages of Marvel Comics, but they're never more than fatherly. And I don't even think the subtext is really there for it to be anything else. I mean, obviously in his daughter's case, he actually is her father, her clone daddy at the very least. But there's Jubilee, there's Kitty Pryde, there's even Jean Grey, if you want to go back that far. Yeah, because Wolverine's definitely older than her. I was talking about Ant-Man. No, I was talking about miniseries, limited series. So that used to carry some weight, for lack of a better word, behind it. That it was like, oh, it's only so long. But now, since every #1 issue of a comic book put out by Marvel, especially DC, actually does kind of, it seems anyway, stick to their guns a little bit more with the regular monthly titles, and then they just put out a plethora of pinatas. Every time Marvel puts out a number one, they never say up front how many issues it's going to be. I think they might actually in the solicit sometimes say it's going to be a limited series, but it never says anywhere on the cover. Like I know for a fact that this is a limited series, but nowhere on the cover does it say that. Because now I guess the thinking is, whereas 40 years ago people would see number one in a finite number of issues, they'd be like, "Oh, I should pick that up because I'm not committed to a whole year." With these now, it's like if people saw a limited series, they would go, "Well, I'm not going to pick that up. It's going to end." And really, now when people look at single issues, floppies as some people call them, they think, "I'm not going to buy that. I'm going to wait for the trade, unless it's a number one." So I would be very surprised if by issue two it didn't say number 2 of 5 or 2 of 6 or whatever it is. This has nothing to do with the story or anything. I just wanted to pick this. All right, good. I'm a little cranky. I also haven't been getting enough sleep. Also, Magic Order 3, number 1. I just am a big fan of Mark Millar's writing, despite everything. I've read other things recently. Like I've constantly, every time Mark Millar comes up, I begin taking sides or getting onto Mark Millar's coming up. Here's the fence I'm going to climb up because I really enjoy his work, but he seems like a real douche. And most of that was just from what my friend Cameron Ashley had told me about him. And I don't know that Cameron had ever even met the guy. But he was, he's one of my dear friends, so I wanted to take his opinion seriously. I read something recently. I think it was Brian Hitch might have tweeted this out. Yeah, I think. My friend Frank sends me a lot of tweets, which is nice because I'm not on Twitter, but he makes sure I catch the comic book thing. And so I think it was Hitch said something to the effect of he worked with a writer once who gave him very little in the way of art direction. But then once the finished art pages came back, the writer went back and changed the script to reflect it, so it looked like he came up with it. And somebody said that's got to be Ellis or Millar. And for whatever, and I think Hitch might have even said like, no, it's not, and like that it is Millar. I don't care. I still like the guy's work, and this is one of my favorites. Magic Order, like every time they try to do a Magic TV show, it always looks kind of lame. But this is more like it really is more like a mafia story told with magic. So there's a lot of violence and there's a lot of death and there's a lot of machismo flying around. They're all British too, so I don't know. Again, I feel like the TV show should be forthcoming, and I would like to watch it, which is something I rarely say these days. But I think what I'm also going to do is, because I always have this problem with this book, is that I really like it, but I can never remember who is who or who these characters are. I have a general idea of who's on what side. So I think I'm making a note to myself to go back and read the first 2 series before I start this one. I will have the day off after all. And then finally, I got this Superman Space Age number 1. This is a Black Label book. And fortunately, it's not. Oh, is it? No, it's not Black Label. Oh, my mistake. This is not a Black Label book. It is an oversized. You can't really tell, but yeah, it's a big one. I want to say it's 96 pages. It's written by Mark Russell, who I'm not over the moon for. He's written some stuff that I have enjoyed, but he also wrote a book for Ahoy Comics called Second Coming, which I did not like at all. And I try not to be negative. I don't like to be negative, but no. But he has also written some stuff that I do like. It was on the tip of my tongue, but that was a Saladin Ahmed book. The main draw, as always, with a book like this is those lovely Mormons, the Allreds. That's right, Mike and Laura Allred are doing art duties, which you can tell right from the cover. And I will buy anything Mike Allred draws ever. If he drew a picture of me getting my head blown off, I would buy that. I was trying to go for you get it. It didn't work out too good for Picks of the Week. Picks of last week. So Picks of last week, which I read mere minutes ago. First we got The Brother of All Men. This was really good. I'm not I'm not like raging hard for the next disgusting metaphor. I'm not raging hard for the next issue, but I am curious. I feel like I'm definitely getting to a point though where I'm just getting too many books, and I'm just going to start cutting back because it's going to start affecting my enjoyment of comics. Just something I've noticed over the years, especially when 2014, 2013, yeah, second half of 2013, first half of 2014, I worked full time at San Diego Comics, which is the first time and also the previous time that I worked full time in a shop. I've worked in a comic book store on and off part time since 2005. But that was the one year that I was on unemployment because I had been laid off from my horrible office job, and I actually had savings at that time, which seems like a dream. So I was buying so many comics that it was becoming a chore, and I fear I'm not quite to that point because I was definitely walking out with like 30 to 40 books a week. I'm keeping it. This I think the last few weeks have been like 30 books a week. Now I'm back down to a more reasonable 20. But if I could notch that down even more, what really gets me though is that I really do want to be supportive of independent publishers, and also there are like that Ant-Man book, a lot of minis that come out. So it's like, well, it's only 4 or 5 issues, but then you add that up over a while. It's a lot of comics. Anyway, sorry. So this is about this fellow here, whose name I've already forgotten half an hour later, who was a veteran of the Great War for Canada. He is in Victoria, Canada, deep in the wilderness, looking for his brother, and it's implied that there's been some real funny business going on. When he gets to town, look, he starts asking around. People are like, "Fuck off! I don't want to talk about this guy because he's part of this big cult out in the woods," which our hero then goes to join, and that's where we end this issue. He also has one of those fake faces from Boardwalk Empire, which is a little too similar. I love Boardwalk Empire. I would love any. I mean, I can't help but enjoy a reference to that fine television show. But if you were presenting to me a character who was a veteran of World War One and has a faceplate from where part of his face is blown off by a sniper, that's too much. Like that character who I can't remember his name now, but he was one of my favorite characters, Richard, one of my favorite characters on Boardwalk. Absolutely one of the, if not the best character on that show. Although that show definitely went down after season 2. Well, I'll save that TV talk for later. It's still good though, and I am still. I would like to read the rest of the series. Another one I read was Hawk the Slayer, which I'm definitely going to buy the rest of because it's Garth Ennis. This was fun, but a lot of the front half was a recap of the film, which I kind of needed but even after reading it, I still didn't remember any of that. Once it gets into the good and violent bits, though, that's when you know you're in Garth Ennis territory. So yeah, this is also the CEO of Rebellion Comics who publishes this and is apparently a Knight of the Realm also. I don't know what they get up to over there. Big fan of the film when he was a kid, and that's the sort of passion project I can give to, even if I'm not a big fan of the original film, which I've never seen without 3 guys making jokes over it. But it was good. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing when I heard Ennis was going to be writing this, I was like, well, he hasn't done anything like that in a while. And now I'm hard pressed. I know he's done like this kind of like his brand of fantasy, which is to say a lot of violence and sex and swearing. But now I'm having a hard time remembering it. Shit. I guess I'll have to look that up. But yeah, it's I would read more fantasy if Garth Ennis wrote more of it. I also read Madballs versus Garbage Pail Kids #1, and this was good, but I think this might be on the chopping block too. It's a nostalgic money grab, which I have no moral problem with. But I realized something else though reading this, which I think I've always known, but I just wanted to enjoy this comic book, so I didn't want to like think about it. Neither of these properties loans themselves to any other medium other than what they are. The Madballs are a toy. The Garbage Pail Kids are a card series, a card set. Sorry about my I have a sty. Woe is I. So when they try to make it into cartoons or movies or comic books, the basic plot, and it's very much for kids too. As the thing is, it's like it's and smartly. I'm not saying this as a criticism. It's trying to be a nostalgic cash grab, but also a quality kids book, and I think it is that. If I were a little kid, I think I would like this book. The art is very true to. Well, I think it's probably more akin to the Garbage Pail Kids aesthetic, but they're very similar. And really, Mad Balls, aside from like the Mad Balls, were a three-dimensional toy, so they don't have the like Garbage Pail Kid. That's the thing about reading this is like when the Garbage Pail Kids show up, I'm like, oh, I remember all these, and I just it's still those cards were so brilliant, and I think, oh shit, did I just make a promise to myself to start collecting Garbage Pail Kids cards again? What am I, 9? That's right. I'm more mature than 8 when I started buying Garbage Pail Kids cards. I don't think I will, but I do really love and John Pound is just such a great cartoonist, and that whole vibe that those cards had, even when they weren't that good, like it immediately. I remember. I want to say by the time the series got into double digits, series 1 was like the most collectible when I was a kid, and then but it's like, oh, series 7 just came out, and I still loved them. But it was definitely by the time it got to like series 11 or 12, I was like, all right. I was also probably a little. No, I wasn't too old for it, but they weren't as ubiquitous. You couldn't just find them anywhere like you used to be able to. But I do really like Garbage Pail Kids. I just don't think I need to buy this comic anymore. But thanks anyway, Dynamite. This was by far the best thing I think I read today. This is Rogues Gallery #1, and as I mentioned last week, the premise is that this woman here plays a superhero on a television program, and she is being hunted by people dressed as her Rogues Gallery, hence the name. But it came at it from a different angle than I was expecting. For one thing, we never see our protagonist, or we certainly don't see her point of view. It's all the villains, and really a lot of this is there was a film I want to say in the late 90s, and I think it was just called Paparazzi, and I'm pretty sure it starred Mel Gibson and Tom Sizemore, and it was about paparazzi, and it was like a stalker thing, and Sizemore played the stalker, and I never saw it because it didn't look that good, but I remember turning to my friend Scott, who actually is in the next room now, and saying to him, what a genius idea, because this was post Princess Diana. So paparazzi were not popular amongst anybody, and it's certainly not amongst celebrities. Not that they've ever been. But I remember at that time, since that was in the air, I was like, man, what an easy movie to have gotten greenlit. You just take it. That was also at a time when more and more actors were producing their own, like executive producers on their own films. So it's like, you pitch a script like that to a movie star like Mel Gibson, he's going to be like, yeah, obviously I'll do that. This reminds me of that movie. It's really about toxic fandom, which is a topic that I feel doesn't get discussed often enough in comics, largely because it probably gets very well trod on the internet. But it's terrible. When I was a kid and I started collecting comics, I knew immediately I was like on the outside now. I'm like, all right, well, I've planted my flag here with the weirdos and the freaks, and I'm completely fine with that because every normie I had ever met to this day is a piece of shit. So, I mean, every nerd is too, but they're at least I could talk to them about Star Wars. And it wasn't long before I realized how toxic fandom could be, mostly because I was brimming with it. I was so because then you're also a lot of the time when you're getting into this sort of thing is during adolescence when your hormones are raging, and when you're being brought up in a, to put it kindly, dysfunctional household. Uh, that doesn't help matters at all either. So, and I think I've discussed exactly this on here before, but just to thumbnail it again, you are 13. You have hair where you never had it before. You have an erection 25 hours a day, and with no relief in sight. You may not even discover jerking off yet. By 13, definitely. And the world is full of loud idiots, and the bad guys win constantly. And you get murphed all the time, or fucking wet willied, or purple nurpled, or whatever your bully's choice of the day was. You have to spin that big wheel. Ah, no, not the fence. I just watched that Looney Tunes. And so you discover comics or science fiction or fantasy or whatever it is that you spend a worrisome amount of time obsessing over. And that becomes your world. That's your refuge. That's your uh, refuge. So when your refuge gets invaded, when you begin to see that, you get even more defensive. You're like, no, you can't have this. And that's exactly what's on display here. We have a group of 4 friends who are big fans of this comic book that this show is adopted from, and they hate it. They hate this show. They hate the actress. Nobody ever thinks to mention why have we been watching it for 10 years. Also, how the fuck is a superhero show stay on the air for 10 years in this day and age? Not since Smallville. And that honestly shouldn't have been on the air for more than 3. Not because it was done wrong. It was just done poorly. Regardless, that's not the point. So yeah, it's these idiots sitting around saying all this, in our sort of point of view character, who is an actual fan, is trying to be like, but I mean, come on, but he's got assholes for friends. He's got an abusive father. He's a lonely dude. And all he has is this comic, and then their show gets canceled, and then that's when even he's on board. So this is great. I love it. This is right up my alley because this is the sort of thing that I think about constantly. And since I'm not on social media anymore, but even when I was, I would very, very rarely delve into any kind of. I've never really on Reddit or any of that bullshit, and I just didn't ever really want to talk comics with strangers on the internet because they're fucking monsters, and frankly, just stupid idiots. That's the thing that never fails to amaze me. How many dumb assholes are into comics because they're constantly saying things, and here I am with the absolutes. I'm often hearing things like this. It wasn't done right. They're not doing it. They're not doing the book justice. They're not listening to the fans. Which that's one that always gets me. Have you ever listened to the fans? You better do it behind a sheet of plexiglass because you're going to get specks of fucking saliva all over you. And you're going to hear about the same fucking Star Trek episodes you've seen a million. Who gives a shit? Of course they're not listening to the fans. They want to make money. And that's the thing. And that is something that I don't like. That I've never liked. But it's only what we deserve. Comic book media has never been more popular. Never in my wildest imagination as a 6th grader would I imagine that I'd see one Avengers movie, much less an entire cinematic universe of Marvel characters. Now, if I were disappointed with it, I mean that would be one thing. I mostly am not, but people get so mad about it. This was similar when the Watchmen movie came out. When the Watchmen movie came out, I saw a video. This is it. I'm wrapping it up. I saw a video. And I'd seen this a few times. Somebody back. This is like, when did that come out? 09? There was a movie, a German movie. It was like Hitler's last days in the bunker. They lose me after the bunker scene. So it's like this big speech that Hitler gives. Obviously not the real Hitler. Although, it's big. It's all in German, so then people would put the subtitles in to have him ranting about something else, something irreverent and pop culture-y. So naturally, somebody did one of the Watchmen movie, and Hitler in that, which is fitting that Hitler is the one to say this, but I had heard this from a lot of people before. He said, "I've been waiting for years, my whole life, for 30 years, or however long it was. Yeah, about 30 years. 20 years to see," spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen the Watchmen movie yet, they cut. In the book. There's a big giant monster that appears near the end of the book, and they cut that entire storyline out of the movie. And so Hitler says, "Oh, I've waited 20 years to see that on the big screen, and now I can't." And it was like, get used to it, Hitler. God damn, with the references today, Jim. How fucking stupid do you have to be to actually say something like that? I know Hitler didn't really say that, but some fan out there wrote it down, put it out on the internet, and it's definitely something I've heard from other people. I've been waiting my whole life to see this on the big screen. Is that right? Haven't been up to anything else? You've been waiting your whole life for this? Because what I hear is I've been doing nothing else. And they just go, what do you just sit in a room? I know that's not what they mean, but that's how it sounds. But even further to that, it's like, why are you waiting for that sort of a thing? What are you, an idiot? It's already there. It's in the fucking comic. That was so that when people were freaking out, I didn't know about the fact that they had cut the monster out until it had been out for a while, and I couldn't give a fuck less because I'm not watching that movie any more than I'm watching Moulin Rouge or some other dumb musical or something. Like if you were to come up to me and when they finally make a Hamilton movie, can you believe they cut this song out? And I would go, sure. What do I give a shit? I wasn't going to watch the fucking Watchmen movie. As soon as Alan Moore said, I'll take my name off it, I also said, me too, take my name off it. But that's that sort of attitude abounds in this comic. I'm really looking forward to the rest of this series. And then finally, this little something came in the mail for Jimmy. As I mentioned, I believe it was last week. I read this comic, There's Something Wrong with Patrick Todd. Great fun by the always fun Ed Brisson, who has become one of my favorites over the last couple of years. And I read the book, but I did point out I emailed him, I was like, hey, there seems to be a discrepancy with the dates. Is that on purpose? And he went, no, that's not on purpose. You caught it, and this is my no prize. He even signed it for me. Can you see it? There it is. I don't know how camera works. Which one's my camera? It's kind of hard to see it with the gold. And he also sent me this nice little note. Jimmy, thanks for catching my screw up. You're welcome, Ed Brisson. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. All right, I gotta go call one of my friends about a funeral for one of my other friends, if you'll excuse me.